be effective and just, so that with courage and vision and energy, we provide positive leadership in a spirit of harmony and compassion. Okay. Item number 3, apologies. Councillor Coe, apology for absence. Councillor Prevanovs, an apology absent due to being on council business. An apology from Bernie Randall, and an apology from Richard Mansell, who's at another meeting just across the corridor and cannot be in 2 places at once, obviously. So would somebody move that they be accepted? Moved by the Mayor, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. All those in favour, say aye. Contrary, no. Carried. Thank you. Any declarations of item 4, any declarations of interest relating to items on the agenda? There appear to be none. Item 5, public speaking time. We have 2 people wishing to present to council. Please come forward. Mr. Andrews, you're first, and take a seat. I've had a discussion with you explaining the processes and so on. So you have 5 minutes. We have already received by email last night please sit down, and more details of your views. I understand you have a shorter version you wish to speak to, so the floor is yours. And then I will proceed with any questions or comments that may arise. But as I said to you, noting that we're not proposing to debate point by point any of the issues or statements that you've made in your submission. All right?
Thank you very much. I fully understand that and appreciate it and respect that too. Thank you for the karakia. I did make a comment that I would like to have some words added to that, and they were the words of fairness, reasonableness, and what was the other one? To be fair and reasonable and equitable, because I feel that's really important for the council. I'm not going to speak today about the detail of what I've written over many, many weeks, either from last night or before. I'm going to be very brief. I won't be asking any questions, and I don't need to actually. But thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm not going to go through the detail of the audit misstatements or the issues highlighted or brought to the public's attention. That is your choice for you to read those statements, whether you read them or not, or whether you take act on them or not. Based on my experience of nearly 20 years now, Kapiti Coast Council is an authoritarian council in the truest sense of that word. And your executive only does what the executive wants to do, with only lip service to the public concerns. I'm sorry to have to say that, but it's 20 years worth of experience. I'm astonished at the statements made by Ernst & Young, your auditors. The misstatements, the omissions, and lack of ability to check the evidence of your financial misrepresentations. The fact remains that I brought the financial inequities and unfairness of how you strike the rating levies to yourself, the Mayor. I brought that to your attention many times, but also to the 3 mayors before you, going back to 2005. This time the wind has changed, and I've chosen a different tack, but I'll come back to that in a moment. For the record, I have already approached the Auditor General about clarifying the misstatements and about the Council's actions. That's just in process. I've already done that 2 days ago. I refer to the statement on page 11 of the 2023 audit plan. There is specific legislation which must be adhered to for the rates set to be lawful. Thank you for that true statement. The Local Government Act 2002 refers to water services over 800 times. The Local Government Rating Act 2002, 74 times. But neither of those 2 pieces of legislation refer to the words equity or fairness or reasonableness. Back to the mark. My strategy has been referred to refer this to Ernst & Young's employer, the Auditor General, because of the inequity, unfairness and misrepresented lies in the LTP. And I'm requesting an opinion from John Ryan, the Auditor General, and Judith Collins to establish the basis on which KCDC can charge for ratepayers for water services that they do not and cannot provide to them. The question is it lawful for KCDC to charge rural ratepayers for water services that KCDC cannot and will not provide to them? I'll circulate this later. I can email it to you.
We're about to circulate it, actually. It's been copied
Yeah,
now.
thank you. So thanks very much. So in conclusion, I'm asking you, or recommending you strongly, to set the rates to an absolute maximum of 12%. But the basis on which that is set is important. At a fixed rate of 12% increase, not 50%, not 40%, not based on misrepresented averages or a fabricated median, which have been misrepresented by you. This is full of so many misrepresentations, I cannot believe it. The sample I took is proof of that. That was only a handful of rural properties. I didn't even check the urban ones. So I strongly recommend that you set that rate at a maximum of 12%. For example, based on a fixed absolute 12%. I hope you understand the meaning of that. That means if I have a $3,000 rate for my bill last year, the rates for this new year, 2024, 2025, will be $3,360. 12% fixed, bottom line. No fabricated stuff behind the scenes or misrepresented in here. That's about all I can say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Andrews. We have received last night from you a more detailed statement, and we're just circulating your one-pager now, which you just handed me. But I'd just like to quickly comment before I open the issue. Oh, by the way, I forgot to welcome our auditor, Sam Nicol from Ernst & Young. As I indicated to you, he's not here to answer and respond any to any particular points you've made. That would not be appropriate. We are here to listen to you, not to reach agreement on all the things that you've said. But I just noted, I was just going to make the comment that when I read through the 7-pager that we got last night, there's quite a few serious statements there. Mm-hmm. You talk about identified misstatements, masking, misappropriation, intentional misrepresentation, falsely claimed, inflating the ratings levy calculation, intentionally attempt to obfuscate or hide. I mean, I could go on, but it's a litany of quite serious complaints, all right? And I would simply make the comment, which I think you've already taken account of, that these are serious matters which should, in view of the seriousness of these statements by you, the issue should be referred to the Auditor General. I understand that you have done that or are proposed to do that. There would also be the avenue for you to raise the issue of audit behaviour with the Institute of Chartered Accountants, if you wish to do that. And you indicated in your first submission, your more detailed submission, that in terms of what you considered lack of response from senior officers here, that you've referred those matters to the Ombudsman. Yeah. So there are other avenues for you to pursue to get these addressed. The only comment that I would make is that in due course, officers, the Council will respond, not to necessarily to every point in detail that you've made, but there are some perhaps factual issues which Council might like to perhaps rebut in due course. So there will be some form of written response to you in due course from officers, because obviously you're talking about a document which is a Council document. It's not owned by the staff. It's owned by the councillors, right? It's a Council document. So that's where I want to leave it at this stage, Mr. Andrew. You're welcome to stay here. You do have a bit of misunderstanding, I think, about the materiality threshold and what that means. If you want to stay for item 9, where we're going to discuss the proposed audit plan for 2023-24 for financial statements, you're welcome to do so. But that's my comment at this stage, all right? And I will see if any of my colleagues have any comments or questions that they wish, any comments they want to make or any questions they may want to direct to you, Mr. Andrews, all right? Thank you. The floor is open. Well, Mr. Andrews, I think you've floored them, so to speak. So we will have further contact, of course, and you will be pursuing this issue through the other channels that you referred to.
Thank you. Yes.
All right, thank you for
very much.
coming. All right. We have one other public member of the public here. I'd like to welcome Salima. I'm not sure about how to pronounce your family name, Selina. I'm sorry.
It's fine, it's been garbled so many times it doesn't really matter.
Well, I would have made an attempt and to not garble it.
Pedamsi.
Right. So you can indicate where you're from and what issues you want to raise with us, all right?
Okay, so I'm the chair of Coastal Ratepayers United, and I'm
Yes.
here in that capacity today. So thank you for taking the time to meet with me today. I will direct my discussion to the Legislative Compliance Report covering January 1st to 31st March 2024.
Just let's find the page first of all, because I think I know where you're at. It's in legislative compliance, is it not?
That's correct.
Let me just find the page for everybody so we can read it. And it's concerning procurement of consultants, really? Is that right? What? Somebody tell me the page number quickly. 88. So page what? Yeah, page 94. 92 is the, anyway, just so that we're looking at the right page, Selena, all
Correct,
right?
thank you.
And this concerns non-compliance with,
Part B2.
sorry, here it is, it's page 94. It's non-compliance with our procurement.
Correct.
Our procurement policies.
Correct.
Yes, please
Correct.
proceed.
Thank you. 2 years ago, on the 2nd of June, 2022, I addressed this committee concerning Jacobs Reports Volume 1 and 2, the Coastal Hazard Susceptibility and Vulnerability Assessment. I clarified at the time to the Audit and Risk Committee that the Council lacked the documentation, including the terms of reference or contract for these 2 volumes. I also emphasized that CREW had raised these concerns with the Office of the Ombudsman, providing the reference number as 561464. The Council admitted that they did not hold any records, so the Office of the Ombudsman investigation was elevated to the Senior Investigation Team. In April 2022, I had informed the Council in writing that ratepayers had paid for a report that the Council neither commissioned nor contracted. I had subsequently informed the Audit and Risk Committee of that same fact, 2nd of June 2022. At that meeting, at minute 44 minutes and 43 seconds, there was a question from a committee member, and it said, "What I heard that person say," that was me, "was that Jacobs had carried out the work and wasn't commissioned, but was paid for by council. I'd like you to be quite explicit. Was that correct or wasn't it?" At 45 minutes and 7 seconds, the response from the acting CEO at the time was, "That was incorrect." The implication is that the chair of CREW, I, had made false statements. In other words, the inference is that I had lied to the Audit and Risk Committee meeting on record. I now draw your attention to Legislative Compliance Report, Table B. Previously reported matters states reference B2, breach type Takutai Kapiti. This clearly states, historical procurement breach relating to Takutai Kapiti, 3 instances identified where no contracts or procurement paperwork are in place for 2 suppliers. And the note that this issue has been addressed and is complete. I would now like to know, and undoubtedly elected members would like to know, in clear, straightforward language, without using bureaucratic jargon, what are the 3 instances that were identified? Who are the 2 suppliers involved? When were the findings shared with the various teams? And what action has been taken to resolve the matter and allow the current status to be labeled complete? If indeed this is the same procurement issue I raised with the committee in June 2022, I am here to inform you that to this committee that it has not been resolved and the Ombudsman's Office investigation remains open. Reference number 561464 has not been closed. It is evident that the concerns I had raised 2 years ago were indeed valid, and Council must acknowledge this. If these refer to the Jacobs Report, Volume 1 and 2, as I explained to the committee in 2022, I would request that the Council issue a formal apology to me as the Chair of CREW and to my members for having stated in the meeting that the information I set out was incorrect. It is utterly shameful, but not entirely predictable, that when members of the public take the time to raise serious concerns to this Council's attention, they are unjustly branded as liars and purveyors of misinformation instead of being engaged with constructively. This Council appears to have a fundamental organizational issue in believing and working with its ratepayers. The organizational culture has remained the same over the last 12 years, insulting, combative, and distrusting of the public. This in itself is a risk to the Council and should be acknowledged as such. Lastly, I have reviewed the legislative compliance report, but have found no reference to the Ombudsman's current investigation of this Council, reference number 008701. I would appreciate your guidance on where to locate this information in your report. Thank you.
Thank you, Salima. I will just respond very briefly. Firstly, there may be some sins committed by a previous council. I'm not sure the extent to which they should be sheeted home to the current council or to the current Risk and Assurance Committee. But anyway, it does seem clear, based on the documentation we have here, that the facts are accepted, that these breaches did in fact occur. I must say that in discussing this, we are not able to identify the names of individual people concerned. This is a privacy issue. It would not be appropriate. But I will have to ask the officers to comment on where we're at, because it states here, actions taken to resolve the procurement concerns for Takutai Tapiti are complete. So, and you feel that they're not?
I don't know.
Well, so let's hear on that first of all. So I think I should invite whoever is the appropriate person to comment on that, Mark, and then we can proceed further. All right?
I'm happy to make a comment.
Yeah, and I mean, apart from that, you want an apology. That's also what you've made, right? Okay.
Yes, and I would like to know, well, I know who one of the suppliers is. It's Jacobs, because that was identified through the Ombudsman's Office.
I'm happy to address the chair. We're happy to speak to the report when the report comes up. And I don't believe it's appropriate for staff to address in public speaking. So happy to talk to the report when it's tabled. But my understanding is that the public speakers are here to speak to the committee and for the committee to ask questions.
So which report are we referring to, Aaron? Which report? Oh, well, this is an item on the agenda, yes. There's no report per se.
No, so we're happy to talk to that.
Right, and the actions taken to resolve the procurement concerns would be the main comment to make, I think, all right?
Certainly.
So just where we're at and what actions have been taken, all right?
Yep, more than happy.
All right?
Can I suggest, through you, Mr. Chair, another course of action? So, Ms. Padamzi has identified some quite specific questions that she'd like answered, and I don't know that they can all be answered today during the report. I'm suggesting that any outstanding issues could be lodged as an Official Information Act request so that we can go
They've
through the
already
proper
been
channels.
lodged.
Well, that should be sufficient. Then
It
we
just
shouldn't
would've-
need to answer the questions today.
Yeah, it would have been helpful if we'd had something in writing beforehand to know exactly, to prepare ourselves to respond appropriately to you. But I think what the Mayor says is right. So they've gone through Goima already,
Absolutely.
and you're waiting on a response.
20 working days.
All right. And when you receive it, I mean, we do acknowledge the breaches that occur, right? That's one thing that's clear from this report here. When we get the information, it'll be sent to you, and then you're welcome to come back to us again.
Right, so that just leaves the outstanding issue of an apology.
Yes, help me here, somebody. I mean, clearly, clearly whatever allegations you made were correct, right? Accepted. They are accepted here, and they were not at the time. I don't know exactly what the previous council said to you, or the previous chair of the Audit and Risk, or the previous chief executive or acting chief executive said. Whether we need to apologise for actions committed by others, I'm not sure. David, you want to make a comment?
Thank you. Thank you. There's a process for these things. Rocking up on the day and saying I want an apology is fine. Sure, now we know what you want, but that you don't do those off on the hoof, not from a subcommittee on the day. You tell the council in writing what your grievance is, what you want an apology for, and they've got to address it. But we can't address it. This isn't a public debate. It's a chance to hear from the public. And if we start engaging with everyone on a basis of you're right, you're wrong, you did this, you did that, the meeting will never end. So an apology today would be rather hollow because I, for one, the chair, for one, don't know the facts. So what will we be talking about? So there's a process to get an apology, but it's not to come to a meeting and say, give me an apology.
Well, I'll put it on the table now so you can take the time to look it over.
No, if you want an apology, you tell us what you want an apology for in writing so we can look at it. We can't do it on the hoof.
Well,
I'm
you
sorry.
don't have to give it to me today. I understand that it's very difficult for this council to apologize.
No, it's not difficult to apologise. I just have no idea what we're apologising for.
because
So
I
put
came
it in
here-
writing or leave it.
Yeah, so it's right here. I've just put it on public record. That at the
Through
meeting,
the chair.
Sorry.
Through the chair, can we resolve as a committee for someone to go away and look at this and have a formal response, and if apology is appropriate, we've got the audio, the transcripts from that meeting.
Yes.
We've got the evidence that there were breaches that Salima obviously knew about, the council may or may not have known. It may be absolutely appropriate for the council to apologise. It may not be. But I think we should do that work and resolve to either apologise or not.
Okay, thanks.
Would be my suggestion.
Thanks, Councillor Comp. That's fine, that's fine. So I think we'll proceed this way, Seema. Firstly, there will be the Lagoima response to you.
Thank you.
And you're welcome to come back to us on that
Thank you.
if you are satisfied or dissatisfied, right? Considering the apology, if you give it to us in writing, it'll go to the appropriate place in council to be considered. But I don't, as David has just said, my colleague David has just said, we don't want to give apologies on the hoof. It would have been helpful if we'd had this a brief written statement beforehand so we could prepare ourselves adequately, because I think we are not adequately prepared to deal with it. But we will deal with it. If you put it in writing, it will be properly considered.
well, could this public record not be considered that written response to you? Could this not be considered a request?
I think what we're waiting, what we want spelled out in writing is exactly what you want the apology for.
Well, I
what
said
statement.
that.
Yes, I know you've said it. I said we'd like to see it in writing. All right?
I can table my
Thank
submission.
you. That's exactly what we need. All right? Are there any further questions? Oh, Martin, Councillor Halliday.
Thank you for your indulgence, Mr. Chair, appreciating that I'm not a member of this committee. Salim, I just had a question which I'd be interested in your answer on with regards to a comment you made with regards to the organisational culture for the past 12 years being competitive. As you appreciate, the last 12 years has been broken into trienniums. Trienniums work in different ways. My question is, in this particular triennium, are you finding the council more constructive to work with, or is this competitive nature still present to the levels that it has been in the past?
Well, I would say that the public mistrust still remains between council and the public.
That's not what my question was.
I don't think this is a legitimate item for discussion, frankly, council culture. You've made the comment, but I don't think we have a need to respond point by point to it. So can we just leave it there? We will respond to your request for an apology, and you will get the Lagoima response. All right?
Yep.
All right. Thank you, Selena. Is any other questions at all? Okay, thank you very much for coming. Members' business, deputations, well, none. Item 7, updates by the chair on members' business, leave of absence, matters of urgent nature. No. So we'll now move to item 9, reports. 9.1, the Ernst & Young audit plan for the year ended 30th June 24. And I'll invite Sam to introduce it, and then we will open it up for discussion and questions. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So included in the papers today is our audit plan for the 30 June 2024 balance date. We will work with officers and auditing council's annual report covering its financial performance and service performance for the year to 30 June 2024. The executive summary on page 10 of our report outlines that we continue to have the same 6 areas of audit focus that we've had in the past, and I'll come to a couple of them shortly. On the right-hand side of the page, we outline our planning materiality for the annual audit. We continue to set this at 3% of forecast expenditure, and that's the overall materiality for the financial statement audit. Where we identify misstatements above $190,000, the amount we consider non-trivial, we'll accumulate those and report them to the committee as necessary. If I move over the page, just a couple of call-outs. In the 2023 year, Council revalued all of its property, plant and equipment subject to revaluation. For the upcoming year, it's only the water assets which will be subject to revaluation. We continue to experience a time of high cost inflation in these related assets, which can see reasonably significant movements, albeit the short period of time between valuations. And an important consideration is whether those circumstances exist in other assets that aren't revalued that may warrant revisiting, albeit not planned. Page 13 deals with rate setting. So the rate strike for the 2024 year was concluded prior to 30 June 2023, and our work focuses on reviewing the rate strike and how that's flowed through into the financial statements and billing to ratepayers. We note on the left-hand column there was a general revaluation of the district effective 1 August 2023. That does not apply for the 2024 rating year. The balance of the report should be matters familiar to the committee. In a couple of places we refer you to the office's publications on areas that might be of interest as a local authority, and really happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Sam. Would you just like to more brief, we're not getting into a discussion to and fro with Mr. Andrew, but could you just clarify this audit materiality question and what it really means in terms of what is reported or what is not reported in the financial statements?
So the financial statements are prepared by management on behalf of the council,
Yep.
and so they are required to comply with accounting standards and report all transactions of the council for the period. It's impractical for an audit to look at everything and get absolute assurance. So we make a quantitative assessment of what level of dollar value is material to the financial statements as a whole. And so that's 3% of council's annual expenditure, actual annual expenditure for the 2024 audit. And in doing that, we use a lower amount in our practical testing, which is also risk-based on other factors. And as I referred to, there's a non-trivial amount of $190,000. So where we identify something that is a difference and is clearly not trivial, we accumulate those and consider the impact on the financial statements, including discussing them with management, ideally reaching agreement, and in some circumstances, correcting them.
So the materiality threshold is about you forming your judgment on whether the accounts fairly present when you do your opinion, your
Correct.
audit opinion. So it doesn't have anything to do per se with what actually goes into the financial statements prepared by council. It's the materiality of any errors or misstatements that you take into account in forming your audit opinion as to whether the financial statements fairly present.
That's right.
Okay. Okay. The floor is open for questions and comments. No? David.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, Sam, I'm looking at page 11, and the level of complexity or management judgment for expenditure, procurement and tendering is low. apart from what we've heard today, just look at any media item, pick up any media stream in New Zealand anywhere, and every infrastructure contract seems to have a massive cost overrun, all the rest of it. What would it take to get that above low?
Can I add to your question, David, bearing in mind the discussion we had previously? Sam, and I'm looking at page 15, where you give more detail behind what.
Yeah, I was getting there.
Oh,
Can
you
you
get,
just-
okay.
Can you just let
Okay,
me
you
finish?
proceed then, okay.
Yeah, Sam, what would it take to, to me, I'm a simple lawyer, so to me, rates setting, invoicing, collection is an accounting exercise. You send out bills, you get the money in, nobody pinches it. You send the right bills to the right people. It's mechanical to me. Compare with expenditure, procurement and tendering, which has the potential to cause an awful lot of damage, reputation, to straight out money loss, and to contracts that no, for whatever reason, may be quite valid, run way over budget. What would it take to move that one up?
The risk assessment reflects a couple of things, David. One being financial statements prepared ex post, so the amounts recorded are reasonably objective. So if the expenditure's been incurred, there's not a lot of judgment as to, if you've procured an invoice and have an obligation to pay it, the expenditure's there, as I use a simple example. Work also includes understanding council's policies for procurement and tendering, considering whether they've been followed for a sample of transactions in consistency with good practice. But as we look at, we summarise our areas of focus that have significance to the financial statements which we're auditing, the inherent complexity of the accounting for expenditure is low. There are other related matters that don't necessarily go to the financial statements, but good practice, which is some that you've drawn on. And so that's the distinction. Whereas in the context of a council, if you were to incorrectly strike rates, follow a poor process, have illegal rates, that's pretty fundamental to your primary revenue stream and council's financial statements. So it reflects why that's a high risk assessment. And that approach is consistent with what's taken across the sector by others in the role I serve for Kapiti.
Yeah, fair enough. Although if you completely botch the rating process, and that happens from time to time, the Parliament always fixes it. In fact, that's what happens. There's a validation process that's been gone through. It's been gone through for Kapiti before. It's gone through for a lot of councils before, when they're in that crazy system we have to levy, make and strike. No one could work out what they all meant, and they got it wrong a lot. It's a lot easier now. But when you go to page 15, for example, it looks like the planned audit approach is, we'll look at how the contract started. We'll look at whether you did the tendering and all that sort of stuff. But once a contract's open, it just runs. And so long as the contractor sends in invoices and invoices get paid, the auditor's happy. Shouldn't we be looking at the council's post-contract reports? What do they learn? What's going on here? How did this thing go over budget? Isn't that almost as important as procuring it in the first place? Arguably more so in some respects.
In other words, your approach is very upstream rather than downstream, right? That's the way I would put
Well,
it.
I don't know
right?
about streams, but what I'm saying is, you look at the start of it and say, yeah, they contracted to build the town hall, and they had a contract, and the contractor sent in invoices. But hang on, the thing went 40% over budget. Why? There's nothing in there about post-contract check to see how it went.
Yeah,
So long as all the bills came in and the money went out, is that where the audit stops? Because I thought efficiency and effectiveness was a bit wider than that.
So we're auditing the financial statements, so the actual spend is what manifests in the financial statements, David. We have an interest in lessons learned, as does council's internal lines of defence around reviewing projects ex post. But the why doesn't necessarily give rise to risks of material misstatement in the financial statements after the fact. So it's relevant, but not a primary focus of our work.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, look, I think that's an important point that David has raised. But it does seem to me, well, I'm just be curious to be sure it's a little bit more. To what extent, if there was a major cost overrun on a project, would you want to refer to it in your audit letter, your audit report to the council? Or as opposed to, obviously it doesn't involve necessarily qualifying the financial statements if the figures are accurate, right? But in what circumstances would you report on, for example, a major cost overrun on a project?
Look, it would depend on facts and circumstances, but we seek to be fulsome in council in our closing reporting on the matters we've identified in our planning, and as you know, we issue a report on control findings where we might make observations around management practices. So if circumstances warranted it, it would appear in one or both of those documents, Chair.
Thank you. Anybody else? Gosh, we're a very silent meeting today. We're going to be finished before morning tea at the rate we're going, right? Okay. Anything else further concerning Sam's proposed audit plan? If there is none, I will move the motion. Can I find it? I will move that the Risk and Assurance Committee receives and notes the Ernst & Young audit plan for the year ended 30 June 24 attached as Appendix 1 to this report. Would somebody kindly move that if they wish to? Moved by the Mayor. Seconder? Seconded by the Chair? Seconded, no, I've already done it. Seconded by the Chair, all right. All those in favour may say aye, to the contrary, no. That is carried. Thank you very much, Sam, all right. Now we move to item 9. Excuse me. Progress update concerning the audit control findings. Sharon, we're in your hands. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, committee members. A standard report, as you've seen before, noting that the updates are highlighted on page 28 and 29 for your information.
Yes.
And just further noting that the in-progress statements simply represent the fact that we do take the available time ahead of the next audit by Ernst & Young, which you've just heard about, to continue to validate our findings and ensure that we've made good and positive progress in attending to these control findings. Thank you.
Yes, some of these things take a fair amount of time to clear up, it seems. Anyway, that's by the by. One of them has been completed, the other two are in progress. All right. Any questions or comments to Sharon concerning that report? There appear to be none. All right. Hang on, let me just find what I've got to read, what I'm going to move. Where the hell is it?
Oh, it's on page, the recommendation is on page 27. Page 27.
Yes. I move that the Risk and Assurance Committee notes the progress update regarding Ernst & Young's report on control findings for the year 30 June 23, attached as Appendix 1, and notes that Ernst & Young will reassess these as part of their audit for the year ended 30th June 2024. All right. I move from the Chair, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, no. It's carried. Thank you, Sharon. Okay, now we move to item 9.3, health and safety, and Rach is coming to the table, is she? Rachel. Why do they call her Rachel, not Rachel? Anyway. Is it Rachel or Rach?
It's Rachel.
Yeah.
She likes to be called Rach.
Okay. Righto, Rach, we're looking forward to you joining us. Okay. We're in your hands, Rach.
Fabulous. Morena, everyone. For those of you here I haven't met, I think there's a few around the table. I'm Rachel, so kia ora. In terms of the...
We're on page 39, by the way, just
Yeah.
in case anyone is like me and gets a bit lost. Page 39.
Oh, thank you for that. Just presenting the Health and Safety Quarterly Report. I'm going to assume that it's been read. And I'd like to invite any questions in regard to the report.
All right. It is open for questions. Thank you. Councillor Compton, yes, sorry. Yes, go ahead.
Good morning. Thanks for the report. It's on page page 43, I see the number of council showing as having completed HSW induction module is below target. So just some comment around that. And secondly, were any of those who haven't completed their induction involved in either near miss or incidents?
Yeah, good questions. Thank you for that. I can't comment in terms of why we currently have such a low rate in terms of our target. That's something that I'll need to look into and come back to you. And my understanding to date is that, oh, actually, no, I can't clarify. I can't respond to if any of those people that haven't done the induction were involved in the health and safety incidents. So I can look into that and come back to you on it, if that's okay.
Nice, thank you.
Thank you,
No
Glenn.
worries.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, first of all, the Deputy Mayor, Lawrence.
On me first, is it?
Yeah.
Okay, great. I've just got a question about incidents. This is page 44, the fourth incident in regards to driving. The Otaihanga roundabout, is that the one on the Old State Highway one?
Yep.
Or is it the one at Ratanui Road, Mazengarb?
I don't know specifically what roundabout that was in terms of that detail.
It's a very difficult roundabout. It has no camber. It's very flat when you're going round it at a much greater speed than you're supposed to.
Yeah, so I'm just asking, that's all, because each roundabout would be, like if I was going to say that Otaihanga roundabout was the one Ratanui Road in Mazengarb, doing that at 40 k's in third gear would spin anyone out,
Okay.
no matter the quality of your tyres.
Right.
So that's my question really, was just in clarity of that.
Can come back to you on that one.
Yeah, so it's only a small question.
And maybe the officer concerned should have been driving a bit more carefully. That's all we're suggesting, perhaps.
Well, if you were on Ratanui Road and you were doing that, I would suggest they need to go back for a driver's licence test.
Thank you, Lawrence. Thank you, Lawrence. Okay.
Noted.
David, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Just on for future reference, vehicle registration numbers don't mean much. What kind of vehicle is much more interesting than the number plate? Was it a van or a truck or a car or what? But my concern really is on the same page with the two actual incidents. Well, there are 4 incidents there. Forget the last one. We've dealt with that. The second one is the public criticism. That seems to be the ongoing trend of aggression from people in the community generally. But the other two both involve scaffolding. It's hard to draw a trend from 2, but there's nothing else. Number 3 is a clear miss. They just didn't put it back, and maybe that's just a mistake. It just happened to be scaffolding. But the number 1 one is quite concerning. There was a big scaffolding collapse in Auckland recently, which happened at night, and which was lucky because if it happened in the daytime, it would have killed people. And the big deal was how much of Ponsonby Road or wherever it was that it blocked. I mean, it was a big collapse. And there was the WSP case where I think people did die in Penrose. Good that it was picked up, but it was brought to the attention of the site manager. Well, that's nice. Then what happened? Has any action been the site manager? Oh yes, the scaffolding was sitting on wooden ramps. That was pretty dumb. I mean, it's downright dumb.
Yeah.
What follow-ups happened?
No, absolutely.
Have
and
they
we can
changed site
respond.
managers? Have they trained the site manager? Is it likely to happen next week? What actually happened?
Yeah, no, really good questions. And we've got David here who can comment with regards to those 2 incidents, because we've looked into it and identified that they're actually this same similar incident on the same site. So if I let Dave talk to how council has addressed that, that would be great.
Please proceed, Dave. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you. Apologies for the voice. I think they actually had 2 different sites. So the first incident, when the incident occurred, the area was cordoned off, and it was actually due for a concrete pour to happen to support the ramp. So that it was, the scaffolding wasn't used until that happened. And then we sat down with the principal contractor on the job and had a discussion with them and issued them a notice to say it wasn't acceptable to us.
Has there been any follow-up with them? Have they? it happened. What's to stop them doing something equally silly again? They another, a notice from the council, piece of paper, shove it in the file, carry on work, or is there is something happening? Is there any? What's to stop it? What's to stop a repeat from those people?
Yeah. I guess it's we've engaged them and they need to comply to our health and safety, and so we make a note of that against them. And when we go to look to engage people, those are the kind of things that we look at as part of the RFPs and that. But as for us taking them to task or punishing them, there's nothing we can do there. We can just really follow up with them and hopefully they learn that lesson of the mistake that was made.
You can ask them what they've done to train whoever was responsible, so that they don't just think, oh, the boss shoved a piece of paper in the file, never mind, let's get on with the job. I mean, have you checked that they're up to date with their internal health and safety training, or is
They are site-wise accredited, which is the standard we require. And look, you noted, we can go back to them. I think they were the main contractor. It was a subcontractor that come in to do the scaffolding, so it was a little bit more complex than just the one-off.
For subcontractors to do scaffolding, not many principals do it. Frank, for what I'm looking at, it's a risk to the council and risk to the poor workers or public. If they say that thing falls down next week, and the council's answer is we gave them a piece of paper to tell them they'd be naughty. It's not a good look.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, David.
Thank you. We'll leave that one there. Cam, you're next, and then Lawrence.
Okay. Sorry, I thought the mayor was next. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just in regard, we're still stuck on those incidents. Sorry. Just in regards to the incident number 2, where the Bobcat drivers were approached by up to 7 residents. I'm just a little bit concerned that there's no communication that's been taken with the residents, so therefore, exactly what Mr. Cochrane was intimating, what's going to stop it happening again? If we haven't done anything with the residents to say that this was potentially not appropriate behaviour, that gives them the leave largely to do it again. So I was just interested if there is going to be any follow-up with the residents, if, I guess if they've been identified as well.
Yeah, right.
These are nasty events. These are nasty things.
Yeah, and we don't want this to happen again.
No. No, that's something that I'll look into. Thank you for that.
The Deputy Mayor is next.
I just probably have a follow-up question around some of these incidents, particularly the ones with scaffolding again. Do we have any means by which we can institute penalties on our principals on contract sites?
Okay, that's a question.
Yeah. I'm unsure. I'll look into the legislation around that in terms of what penalties we could apply and come back to you. Yeah.
Yeah, because my concern is the reputational damage, which is the bigger issue here probably than, obviously the safety of the workers is massive, but we have no control over that in the end because it's the principal's responsibility. But from what I understand, there are a lot of occasions like this where our council staff are having to institute or enforce health and safety, basic health and safety on sites.
Correct.
Which to me is then costing us as council that we don't recoup those costs in any way for us doing work that it's the principal's responsibility that we pay them to do to keep their workers safe. Yeah. So do we have an ability to penalise an organisation? Because that would enforce compliance pretty quickly if we started to go, we're not going to pay you some of the money that we're paying you because we're doing the work for you.
Yes.
Does that make sense? So I'd be interested to see whether we have any teeth in that regard around particularly health and safety.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because if an incident happened and council was the one who had contracted it would blow back on us pretty badly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure, David.
Were WorkSafe involved in either of these?
Uh,
Were WorkSafe involved in either of these matters? Did
yeah.
you report it or did
My
they
understanding
report
is it was. Dave? Yeah.
Number 3 was our building inspector going onto site just down the road, feeling very unsafe, withdrew from the site, ensured the developer was aware of the issue, and we double checked with WorkSafe, and they had been advised by the developer, which was good. But we sense checked that just to make sure.
And on the first one, did we advise WorkSafe or the?
Sorry. Mayor?
No, we didn't. It didn't meet the threshold.
The Mayor, have you got to comment, Janet?
Oh, I've got a question about something else. So
Right.
I'm happy for this
We finished
discussion
the these incidents, these particular incidents. Right, then the next question from you, Janet, sure.
Yeah, I'm just wanting to ask about aggressive interactions. So we didn't have any reported from January to March. I just wanted to ask what's the kind of threshold that we use? How aggressive does somebody have to get before it gets logged as an aggressive interaction? And what's the process for reporting aggressive interactions? I think I've had one in the last couple of weeks, and I'm not aware of how I would, as an elected member,
Okay.
report that.
This is to you as an individual as opposed to you. Thank you. Okay, right.
Because aggression doesn't have to be physical, right? It has a mental health and emotional impact as well.
Sure.
And I'm particularly thinking of our customer service team. How is it monitored and reported, and how do we make sure we're picking up on incidents that happen or?
Yeah, it's look very good question, and I think your point there is aggression is very individual, and how it's perceived by an individual is different. And if people feel that they've been put in a position where they've been exposed to aggressive behaviour, we would take that, seriously. But the levels, are different. There's no sort of legislative definition around what aggressive is. And what you might find aggressive versus what somebody else might is quite different. But it's no different to the threshold and harassment and bullying, how you define that. We do have internal processes and support, particularly for our frontline kaimahi around that. But you raise a very good question around how do we support counsellors in that space who are also presented with it. So that's something that I'd definitely like to look at around how we support in that space.
Yeah, community boards in particular too, because
absolutely.
community board meetings are held in other venues in the public, and they're often the most public-facing kind of meetings that we have. I mean, there was a death threat at a community board meeting that I was at, and we had to call the police, and I'm not sure that was ever logged as an aggressive incident.
Okay.
So I just think it's something that we need to be vigilant about, particularly with the kind of unsettled feeling that seems to be pervasive at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think aggression is increasing community-wide.
Yes, it is.
Plenty of evidence of that, yes. Councillor Kirk.
Sorry, Chair, can I just comment with my health and safety head on? I run de-escalation training for the organisation I work for. So the definition we use is when the behaviour of one makes another feel unsafe, when the surroundings makes us feel unsafe, or when I may not feel unsafe, but I can logically see the situation as unsafe.
Nice.
So there's situations where we may feel quite happy, but the situation is actually unsafe to the objective the viewer. So
Where
it's
does
a
that
sort of
definition come from?
three-pronged assessment.
Where does that definition come from?
From me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, from my.
Well, as usual, it's
yeah,
very helpful.
from
It's very helpful,
my
yeah.
technical
Yeah.
background. Yes. So just to reiterate, when the behaviour of one makes another feel unsafe, when the surroundings make us feel unsafe, and we may not feel unsafe, but I can logically see the situation as unsafe. So it's a subjective, objective assessment, and everyone will see that differently.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
But I imagine the reporting line would be filing a near miss or incident report. But it's a simple process, and we should be, as elected members, if we are any one of those three things, in my view.
Thank you.
Okay, anything further? Otherwise, I propose to move to the next item on the agenda. In this case, I move that the Risk and Assurance Committee notes the Health and Safety Quarterly Report for the period 1 January to 31 March 2024 attaches Appendix 1 to this report. Will somebody move that, please? It's moved by the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Martin. It's time you seconded something. Sorry. Oh, you can't? No, of course not. Glenn, please. Sorry.
Thank you.
But it's nice to see you here, Martin. It's nice to see you here anyway. Moved and seconded. All those in favour say aye. The contrary, no. The ayes have it. Well, now we come to our favourite colour chart exercise, and I invite Nyanka to come forward and tell us how we're doing, right? A summary of the pages, I think, on page 47, and we can go into the individual parts of it, seeing where we have moved downwards and left, which is our objective, right? Okay. Thank you, Nyanka. We're in your hands, right?
It was on.
It was on. Kia ora, good morning. I will take the report as read. I was just going to highlight page 47, section 12, where I refer to the control review that SLT has done on all the controls of 7 risks out of this top 10 so far, which has led us to discuss effectiveness rating of those controls, followed by new treatments or amended treatments to actually amend the risk further. A few themes came up in those discussions. One was about SLT oversight of asset management plans and the need to do some reporting to this committee, which has come up in the last meeting as well. A treatment has been proposed and included in the heat map. These have all been highlighted in yellow, so they will be easy to find. Another discussion that came up was about alignment on big strategic land developments and the need to refine the processes that are in place. Some treatments have been added for that. Continuous staff education came up a number of times as well, and we're starting off a treatment next week actually to put some programs in place to deal with that. We also looked at the likelihood ratings of 2 of the top 10 risks, 4 and 6, and these are trending towards target. We also had a discussion about adding emergency management, which was added to organizational risk number 9 the last time around. An extra heat map has been added. So for Org 9, you will see 2 heat maps. One refers to business continuity planning, and the other one is for emergency management preparedness, because they're on different trajectories of maturity, so to speak. That's why they are reflected in different heat maps. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Nyanka. I just note that in particular importance is the fact that in future asset management plans will come to this committee. How regularly, as they are, well, what's the process for this flow is what I'm really asking, right?
The proposal is to develop an asset management policy, mostly focused on what are the key aspects and the improvements planned in the asset management plans, and to put in place a regular rolling reporting program towards SLT, and then up to this committee, mostly with regard to improvement plans that are part of asset management plans.
Well, I welcome this. I think it will be helpful. It's something I've been concerned with. But, of course, there is an audit process which applies to these as well. So you might want to comment on that too, right?
Yes, in the SLT cycle, usually the large infrastructure asset management plans are part of the usual EY audit. Mostly the focus is on 3 waters and roading.
Yes. 3 waters
and that's
and roading,
reported back to
obviously.
this committee.
Yes, we would be, I mean, we're all concerned about public toilets, but that's less important in a way. Well, it depends on who you are, but less important normally than roading and
Yes, so
Three Waters.
of these sort of critical assets, the audit focus is often there,
Of
and that
course.
gets reported back to this
All right.
committee already.
Yeah, we'll look forward to receiving those in due course. Floor's open. Lawrence.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question around risk number 2, looking at page 57. You've highlighted there a workshop with elected members on this topic will take place in May 2024. Is that related to social media, that workshop?
No, the workshop, the discussion revolved around an education program with code of conduct for staff as well as code of conduct for elected members. And I've been updated by the Democratic Services Manager that a workshop will take place this month. And that was code of conduct in relation to very likely use of social media and other interactions.
Okay, have we got that in our calendars? Because we're now the 23rd of March, we've got a week.
Yes,
Oh, it's next week. Okay, great,
I
perfect.
just see a note because that what was confirmed to me. Yeah.
Oh, there it is.
Yes.
It is called a social media workshop. Okay, cool.
Yes.
Okay, so that's broader than social media. You're suggesting that it's...
It was related to a discussion that evolved around code of conduct. How do we do things in council for staff and elected members? And it will also become part of that rolling education program development that we're talking about.
Okay, I think it would be really helpful to, just from my perspective, to highlight that that workshop fits with our risk matrix, that it's one of our activities to mitigate that risk. And so it becomes important, highlighted for our elected members to make sure they're there.
Absolutely, I can take that up with the manager. Yeah.
Thank you.
Could I just raise a point concerning, I guess it relates to number 6, inadequate management of the impacts of central government reform and change. I'd just be interested to get a quick comment from officers on what is happening with this proposal, this actual regional water organisation to which we are apparently going to become a member along with other parts of the region. I'm just finding it, I mean, obviously, in principle, everyone's in favour of collaboration and cooperation. We do have a water regulator, of course, which applies to everybody. But I'm just finding it hard to see, well, what in common we have, given our catchment area, our discharge issues. I'm just finding it hard to see where that's going to take us and where it will benefit us. So can we have an update? What have we committed to in terms of this new organisation? We know that the government's mantra is local water done well, but this is not local water, this is regional water. And I think we are concerned that we do local water well here, is the point really. So can we just have an update about where we're at with this this new body? Because we have some commitments to it. Well, you'd like to answer it, Darren, that would be very helpful, right?
Put me on the spot, thanks.
Oh, sorry. But you know it all anyway.
Yeah, I'll chip in and I'll start and then and then the mayor.
Janet, you attend the meetings. I'm sorry, you attend the meetings.
Yes, the mayor will be much more articulate.
Yes.
So the mayor is our delegate to the local water done well, wider Wellington regional working group, and she sits on the governance group. It's fair to say that we're in early stages of discussing what a regional entity would look like. It is something that the government is promoting nationally in what I am calling their reform revolving door, I guess, that we're seeing with the changes in government. There will be decision points along the way. So our first decision point for this council will be August of this year, where we will come back to you with an update as to how the conversation is progressing and what the next steps look like for us. Remembering that we have in our standing orders the requirement for referendum, a public referendum, if we want to transfer the ownership of our water assets away from council. That's probably my little piece, and then I'll pass to the mayor.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Janet, I should have recognised the fact that you, of course, are there, and I'm sure you're representing us well. So tell us what you've committed us to or supporting, if you'd like to.
No major commitments yet, just signing it on the dotted line to talk about things, really. So, yeah, we've had one meeting so far, and what was clear to me from that meeting is there's an intention to work quite fast in this space. So keeping everybody updated will be one of the challenges. We have off-ramps as we go through. We're not committing to stay to the end of the process if we feel like it's not going in a direction that we're comfortable with, or we get a clear indication from the community that they're not wanting us to progress.
I hope they're wide off-ramps.
Yeah. So the challenge that we have is that we do have this requirement for a poll or a referendum in our standing orders in order to transfer any entities. So I've written to the Minister outlining that situation, just so that everybody's aware, because of course when we had the Three Waters, that would have trumped that requirement, but a voluntary transfer of assets would trigger that referendum. So, yeah.
Thank you.
The other point is that all of the councils across the region, referendum or not, will have to do some significant consultation and engagement before entering into any kind of entity.
Thank you. Yes, David, you're next.
Thank you. I've got three quick points, all conveniently on page 66. In the controls, it says so third one down, strategic projects alignment developments, which seems to me 4 buzzwords in a row. But what's that mean, and why is it in legislation and not in social license or something? If managing projects is not normally a legal problem, it's more of a you've screwed up and the public hate you. So
Whereabouts on the page are you,
well,
David? Sorry.
three lines down.
Oh, right.
Yeah, strategic
Number 9,
projects
number 9,
alignment
yeah,
development.
right, thank you.
It sounds good, but what is it?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, this was raised in an earlier meeting we had, and I will clarify the title a little bit more to make it more readable and understandable straight off. In the treatment, it is described that this has a focus on large regulatory processes around land use development and seeking alignment between the different parts of council that all need to seek that alignment with these big projects moving forward. So it's about
subdividers or somebody who wants
it's large land use development, exactly, and it's mostly driven from our regulatory function, which is one of our core functions, but we need to be attached to a few other functions in councils to do that well and bring that to a good end. So this is about refining that process. So I'll rename the control to make that clear.
Thanks. That makes more sense now. That's fine. Just below risk treatment title, the asset management policy, and not started. I should have raised this with the auditor when he was here, but they say that the property, plant, and equipment with 2.1 billion are our biggest assets. I disagree with them. I think the people are the assets, but the biggest assets. But of the physical ones, yeah, I agree with that. So when does this all start? It's going to end by December, but it hasn't started yet.
First meeting will be next week to get that process off the ground, and it shouldn't take that long because most of those processes are already all in place. It's about getting this program together to actually have that regularity of feedback and overview by SLT and this committee.
Great, thanks very much. And the final one is one that I raised earlier, right at the bottom. The implementation of the legal strategy is going to take till April 2026, which to me means either the strategy is wrong or something seriously wrong with the either the strategy itself is faulty or the implementers don't know how to do their job, because no legal strategy takes 2 years to implement. And what are you doing? And what happens in the meantime? I mean, it relates to internal legal services and advice from external lawyers. It doesn't take long. It doesn't take 2 years to sort your external lawyers out. It takes about 2 months if you at the most, and that's if you do a whole competitive process. So, 2 years to sort our legals out just doesn't make sense to me.
Yes, I can comment on that as well. We've spoken to the legal manager about this, and this was an initial timeframe because some resourcing also needs to take place in the meantime, but definitely June 2025. We can assure you that it will all be in place.
That's better. I mean, it's not hard to employ lawyers either.
Yeah, so that will
Thanks.
be changed.
I can assure you.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on any parts of this? Yes, Martin, please.
Thank you for your indulgence, Mr. Chair. Page 59, Org 3 talks to failure to give effect to treaty and obligation to iwi Hapua Māori. In regards to the information that's on there, I see nothing here in regards to the Māori ward conversation or situation that we're smack bang in the middle of at the moment. Should that be getting captured here at all? I'm just curious to know whether that is or not.
Yeah. Good point. We're in the middle of this issue, yeah.
Kia ora, yeah, good point. Thank you. I think that's an oversight that I've made, actually. Thank you. We'll have a discussion following this hui with Ninka. Kia ora. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, sure, Mark, please.
So through you, Mr. Chair, look, thank you for pointing that out. So, look, one could argue that the council already has voted on the Māori ward, and it's an event that's taking place. So this risk register is for things that haven't yet happened. So it's actually accounting for stuff that hasn't yet happened. So we have this tension of the risk register is identifying something that could happen, and what are the controls in place to make sure it doesn't happen, and if it does happen, what is the likelihood and what are the consequences? So the representation review is underway. Government's change legislation is underway. So that is something that is happening, and that is something that needs to be managed, and we need to reduce the risk. But it is appropriate not to be on a risk register because it is an event that is already happening, that is being managed. This is identifying our top 10 organisational risks, and it's things that haven't yet happened, and what are we doing to make sure that they don't happen. So that's why it is not there. It is something that is being 100% managed through the rep review. That is a different process.
Fully appreciating what you're saying, and thank you for the clarity on that. With regards to the process, shall we say, which will finish potentially at the elections, there is leeway for, shall we say, some interesting debate in the community, which could be quite colourful. That doesn't get picked up in this register. That's just part of the process, so to speak, because there'll be a certain element of risk, I would have thought, around that. Where would that sit? If it doesn't sit here, where would that sit?
Well, no, it's not a risk to the organisation as I see it. I mean, it's
Okay,
something
no,
that's
that's
it's
a
in
fair
our
comment.
mind all
Yep.
the time, obviously, but
No, that's a fair comment. It's just going to be a general risk as such to potentially the organisation, to elected members, to all sorts of people. But I was just curious about that. That was all.
yeah, I mean, we are bound to do certain things if this law is passed. We know that, and we don't know what the results of the referendum would be. We all know that, right? So, but thanks for raising the point,
So-
Martin. Yes.
Through you, Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
Would it sit under social licence? That
Well, it might relate to Te Reti organisation number 3 as well, right? Anyway, there's lots more conversations and so on to take place on this issue, obviously, and we're all aware of those issues, right? Thank you, Martin. If there's nothing further, I will move that the Risk and Assurance Committee receives. No, would somebody move that the Risk and Assurance Committee receives and notes this report, including Appendix 1? Who? Thank you, Councillor. Hey. Councillor Cooper, thank you very much, and seconded by the Mayor. I will put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, the motion is carried. Now we move. We're making great progress, team. We move now to Internal Audit Work Programme with Sharon again. Thank you, Sharon. Page
84.
84. We're in your hand, Sharon. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, a regular report that you do receive. noting that page 85 and 86 give you the progress updates. Of note, as referenced here, is that the scope of the conflict of interest and code of conduct internal audit grew to a point where it was agreed it would make sense to have two separate audit reports prepared and draft for that. They are now with Rach as the new incoming Group Manager, People and Capability, for her consideration, and we will be meeting with her. And another point to note, you're aware that our approach is to support the group managers with this audit work and look to help them and their staff improve what they do, identify the gaps, and see how the systems and processes can be fixed. With that in mind, the discussion that we will be having with Rach is really validating exactly what we've found and identifying what was the cause and how can we fix it. So when you see it's in progress, we're not necessarily taking a long time, but we are diving deeper in order to be efficient at that point of time of analysis and get a good result from our work. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. The report is open for discussion. Are there any? In that case, would somebody kindly move that the Risk and Assurance Committee receives and notes the internal audit progress report on the work program for 23-24. Moved by David, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. I will put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. The contrary, no. It is carried. Thank you very much, Sharon. Okay. Oh, yes. Sarah, to come and talk to us about legislative compliance or non-compliance, as the case may be. All right? Thank you, Sarah. We're in your hands to highlight what you think we should be paying attention to. All right?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Look, the report is very similar to that received in the last quarter. The main point to note is really that there are a number of privacy breaches that are reflected in the report. They're low risk, and from my perspective, it reflects an increased awareness of privacy. We've been putting some effort into ongoing communications. Last week was Privacy Week, so there were some communications and education activities for staff. And so the breaches that you see there are largely administrative, but are the sorts of things that can happen in organisations and give pause for thinking about systems and processes and what we might do differently, but nothing alarming from my perspective. So reflective of increased awareness rather than an increase in I think, breaches. So happy to take any queries that you might have.
Thank you, and we have discussed the issue relating to the issue on page 94 about Takutai Kapiti. We've already discussed that one.
Mm-hmm.
The floor is open. Yes, David.
Just on that item B2 on page 94, I just want to give notice that I want to raise a matter in public excluded on the grounds of personal privacy of natural persons, but I want to discuss that there. Thank you.
We will discuss it separately there. Your issue separately there. All right, thank you. Anything? Lawrence.
Yeah, I just have a question in regards to accuracy in the report, A6.
A6.
Which is on page 93. Just in the corrective action, it says there held training for all EMs in May. That training hasn't happened, so I would say that it's proposed training for in May would be the appropriate thing, and that item is not complete yet.
Correct. I think that was probably just a crossed wires in terms of upcoming and the date of the Risk and Assurance Committee. So that is a correction that needs to be made.
Yeah, because this is a quarter 3 report. Isn't it?
Correct. Yeah, correct.
Great. Thank you.
We all need a lot of training. That's perfectly clear. All right, particularly on this issue. Yeah. Anything further? No, there's not. Gosh. All right. Okay. I'll just find what I've got to move. Here we are. Would somebody move? No, I will move that the committee notes legislative non-compliance for the third quarter. We heard the report legislative compliance, but here we're talking about noting legislative non-compliance for the third quarter of the financial year from 1 January 24 to 31 March 24 as an attachment 1 of this report. I move from the chair, seconded by the mayor. All those in favour will please say aye. The contrary say no. It is carried. Gosh, we're ploughing ahead. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Sarah. Quarterly Treasury compliance, are you presenting this or is, okay. We're in your hands, quarterly Treasury compliance. I might say that, as you're aware, this, the review and changes to the policy have gone to full council and been approved, going through the Strategy, Operations and Finance Committee, and Jing has sent out details of it. If anyone wants to plough through this highly technical document, I've read the executive summary, but I haven't got much further, I must admit. But anyway, please proceed, Mark, and tell us what we need to know.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. So yes, I'll be presenting this because Jing is working on updating our long-term plan. So I will take the report as read. There's a couple of things I think I would like to highlight, as the Chair has alluded. So this report is reporting on the compliance of the Treasury Management Policy for the third quarter, which is obviously January to March. On the 28th of March, the Council adopted a new draft Treasury Management Policy, which has made some changes to how we manage the maturity of our debt and how we manage our interest rate swaps. So the report does identify that we have had a small breach in quarter three with regards to our swaps, but it also points out that there's a breach under the current policy, but the policy that the council is transitioning to, there is no breach because we've changed the way in which we manage the swaps. So our Treasury Management Policy, it has been adopted as draft. We are going to be arranging Bancorp to come in and do a workshop with councillors and elected members to take us through that. Without getting too technical, the change that we're making to managing our swaps, a swap is an instrument that we use to protect the council from rising interest rates. Under the old policy, being compliant, you had to manage when those swaps matured. You weren't allowed to. You had to have so many maturing in the 1 to 3 bucket, the 1 to 3 year bucket, the 3 to 5, and the 5 to 10. And as we worked through that with Bancorp, it actually made no sense. You were actually effectively through that policy. We were being forced into procuring swaps with set maturity dates to be compliant, whereas actually a swap is about the duration of cover that it provides. So please be assured, we have breached the old policy, but under the new policy there is no breach. It makes perfect sense to move to treating them in a different way, and we also won't go and purchase swaps which are overpriced at the moment just to comply with the policy. So we haven't actually purchased a swap for some time. Through Bancorp and through our own expertise, the prices of current swaps today are very, very high. So when you purchase a swap, you actually contract council to that instrument for whatever period. If it's 2 years, we have to pay a certain amount of interest, an interest rate for 2 years. So we won't just go and buy an expensive swap to be compliant, but we'll report that back to you. So it's a small breach, and as I say, we are moving to a different policy. The other thing that I wanted to point out was really was the chart. The chart below paragraph 11 on page 119 was correctly identified as out of scale. So it looks like our gross debt is touching our gross debt limits. It's just out of scale. What the chart is showing, it's showing what our gross debt is, and then it's showing what our net debt is. These are so we pre-fund our debt maturities, so we put that money on term deposits. It's just showing you the gross debt and what we've got in the way of cash. As the report says, the net debt to revenue is sitting at 198%. So we're well below our upper limit of 280 and well below our limit of 250. So apologies, that escaped me. That chart is just out of scale. Our gross debt is not touching our debt limit at all. And happy to take questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mark. So you'll change the presentation for next time, obviously.
Yes.
All right. David, you're first, yes.
Just on this question of pre-funding debt, see if I've got it right or wrong. Just bear with me. We need to refund some to renew our financing of a debt, say in September. So we go out now and we borrow the money and we physically take it and put it on term deposit. Do we gain or lose in that transaction? I mean, are we getting more on term deposit than we're paying to borrow it, or should we? Is that like we're actually physically getting the money? It's not a facility that we say we've now got at the end of May a facility we can draw on in September. In the meantime, we pay 2% for it or whatever. Can you just explain how it works?
Yeah, sure. So through you, Mr. Chair, look, you're absolutely right. So our Treasury management policy allows us to pre-fund up to 18 months in advance of a debt maturing. So what we're trying to do is, so at the moment we can borrow money through the LGFA and put it on term deposit and actually make what's called an arbitrage. So we can actually invest for a higher interest rate than what we borrow. Okay, so it makes sense to do that. So we borrow in advance, we put it on term deposit, and the council earns the money. But that's not why we do it. That's not the reason for pre-funding. Ultimately what we're trying to do is the local government funding agency borrows to all councils, and we all participate in the same bond. So what we're trying to do is actually mitigate our funding risk. So if all councils are renewing their funding at exactly the same time, then we're at the mercy of the market. So we're actually trying to, by having a pre-funding program, we've got the liquidity, we've guaranteed that we've got the money to do the refinance, but we're also trying to actually borrow money at least cost to ratepayers. So it's supply and demand. If we're all knocking on the door of the LGFA on the same day to refinance all of our debt, the interest rates could be higher. So it's an interest reduction strategy.
Sweet music to my ears. Are we smarter than most councils then, or are they all trying to pull that?
Of course.
Through you, Mr. Chair. No, look, not at all. Look, our treasury management function in the local government sector is pretty basic. Our interest rate swaps are just interest rate swaps. Potentially most councils have a pre-funding strategy. We've all more or less got the same credit rating. Our pre-funding goes out to 18 months, some councils at 12. We're all using pretty much the same Treasury advisors, either Bancorp or PwC. I wouldn't say we're cleverer than anybody else, but we do have a slightly future-dated pre-funding program than other councils.
Yeah, thanks very much, mate.
Thank you. Martin, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Hey, Mark. Look, nothing too major. If I was to make a comparison what you're talking about with that breach in regards to things, how we loosened up, actually I shouldn't say that, so how we restructured our policy with regards to the 3-year window to manage our finances within council, would it be a fair comparison that we've done something similar here with regards to, in other words, being able to make, rather than things being tied into time constraints and we have to do a thing, we've been giving ourselves a bit more flexibility in maybe, I don't know what the period of time is, a bit more flexibility to react positively to the market rather than be forced to deal with the market because of what we are, with the rules that we've put in place, if that makes sense.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Yes.
Cool. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the short answer is yes. The slightly longer answer is that we looked at what is it we're trying to measure with our interest rate swaps. our interest rate swaps are protecting the council. So it didn't make sense to effectively put a performance measure on when our swaps are maturing. And so, by way of a simple example, if we had $200 million of debt and a $25 million swap, and that swap had a duration of 8 years, effectively the council has 12.5% hedging cover for 8 years, because you've got that swap today, and that swap is in existence for 8 years. 25 million, 12.5% of 200. Under the old policy, that would be showing in the 5 to 10 year bucket. It's not really telling us anything. It's telling us when are our interest rate swaps maturing. It isn't actually telling us what level of hedging do we have. So we've changed the measure to better reflect what hedging actually does. It better measures the protection that council has, but it also allows us to be agile, because the current policy says no matter what, the council must have 55% hedging or higher. And we've looked at that and said, well, that's if the market pricing is advantageous to do that. So we've put the agility in by varying the amount of hedging that we must have in place over time. And that helps to reduce the cost to council and increase the protection.
Mark, you lost me at yes. No, but no, I'm actually, I got that with regard to things, so I must be improving. But I like the fact that we are working in a bit more of an agile manner in this way, which to me, just again, as I've said with the last one, makes good business sense.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mark? If there are none. Oh, sorry, Lawrence, sorry.
I'm loath to ask the question, but it just interests me.
Steel yourself, Mark, steel yourself.
I've already been commented by someone today, if you don't ask the question, you don't have to apologise. So, but I'm going to ask. Point 31 on page 124, which is around our interest, income and expense for the 3 months ending 31st of March. I'm just interested in terms of our year-to-date budget puts us at 4.35% of the costs for the loans, but our forecast is 4.64%. Are we confident that our budget forecasting, I mean, that's a 0.3% difference, and are we? I know there's some volatility around interest rates, but in that 9 months, that's quite a substantial shift from budget.
That's $1 million.
Yeah,
unfavourable.
that's a big chunk that we haven't budgeted for.
Yep.
And in terms of our conversation heading into a long-term plan, how confident are we that we're budgeting appropriately moving into the next financial year?
Through you, Mr. Chair, thank you. So a few questions in there. So the reason, so in terms of the budget weighted average cost of borrowings is at a point in time, and we will look at past performance versus what we know is coming forward. We don't often get that. We don't often get that right, and we didn't predict interest rates to go where they are, and it's one of the reasons why we haven't transacted a swap. So if you're able to transact a well-priced interest rate swap, that does help to bring your weighted average cost of borrowings down. In terms of the forecast, what we're actually seeing is that so when we set our capital expenditure program, we don't budget to actually spend a whole lot, because for unforeseen circumstances we never do. But what we're actually starting to see in this financial year, that we're actually going to deliver more of the capital works program than what we anticipated. So we're borrowing more, interest rates are higher. So the 4.64%, we've got we're pretty confident that that's going to be 4.64. 4.35, the budget was a really good estimate at the time. And that's part of our treasury management, is to try and manage our treasury, try and manage our debt as efficiently as we can. But what's actually coming through is we've forecast, we've got a full year budget of 89 million. We would have budgeted to spend 75, and it looks like we're going to spend 82. So we're taking on more debt at higher interest rates than what we budgeted to do. So yes, we're pretty confident of the 4.64. It is quite a deviation from what we budgeted, but that's part of our treasury management, is to minimise that risk as much as we possibly can. When the work is going, and that's why we do forecast internally, that's why we ask our activity managers to forecast, because we have to make sure the money's in place, and we do our very best to actually make sure that money's there at least cost to ratepayers.
Can I have assurance that our budgets for the first year of the long-term plan at least for interest costs are appropriate in light of what you've just said?
Tough one.
Well, so budgets are set at a point in time. And so we've made financial assumptions, and our assumptions are audited, and we've assumed what the interest rates will be over the 3 years. But it is crystal ball gazing. We have used our best estimate of what those interest rates will be, and they flow through the long-term plan. What we do commit to is when we do the annual plan for year 2, if we need to revise the interest rate, we'll budget for that accordingly, and that's why we have annual plans. So for the long-term plan, we assume an interest rate over 10 years, which is best estimate at the time. If we need to adjust that for subsequent annual plans, we will. So I can't give you assurance that our assumptions around our interest for the next 3 years are spot on, because financial markets change drastically all the time. But what I can assure you is what we've based it on, it's been subject to audit, and it is reasonable.
Okay. So my guess from my perspective is that we are budgeting 4.64 for year 1 of long-term plan.
No, we're not, because we know we are expecting interest rates to fall. So as the Reserve Bank is getting inflation down, we're starting to see interest rates coming down. So no, we're not budgeting our weighted average cost of borrowings. We are sitting at, I think it's 4.2%. So we're expecting over the next 3 years interest rates to fall. So we've taken an average over the next 3 years.
Well, at the moment, the Reserve Bank indicated that they were nearly going to raise interest rates, but decided not to. Anyway.
Okay, this may be a conversation for
This is
offline.
up and down, you know.
I am concerned that we're predicting a decrease in the first year, particularly when we're saying interest expense is going up in the consultation document, and yet we're budgeting it going down. That concerns me a little bit, possibly a lot.
Yeah. So when we model, through you, Mr. Chair, when we model, so we look at the markets, and we don't price in our weighted average cost of borrowings. We have to price in what we think interest rates are going to be, not what our weighted average cost of borrowings is, because that's a result of the debt that we borrow and our swaps. So we have to price in what we think the market is going to do. And so we've looked at that. We've looked at economic reports. We've looked at Bill, and we've made a viewpoint. We have cut $99 million out of the CapEx program for the first 3 years. Now, in the past, we would set a capital works program, but in terms of budgeting, the fact based on past performance, we never deliver the full program. We're always carrying money over, so we don't model the debt and the interest on actually spending all of that money. We apply a haircut, as does Standard & Poor's apply a haircut to us. The fundamental difference is for the 24-34 long-term plan, we haven't done any haircuts. We've reduced the capital works program to what will be delivered. And so we've modelled the interest on that amount, on delivering that amount. So we've changed our methodology a little bit, and we've priced in what we think it'll cost the council to draw down debt over the next 3 years. So it's very different to our weighted average cost of borrowing. We have to price into our budget what is new debt that we don't yet have going to cost the council.
Martin, again.
Hi again, Mark. It's actually more of a comment than anything else, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Mark. I went pretty hard on this sort of stuff in the last training, getting my head around the sort of things, but our average was around the 6-7% mark, that sort of stuff. When interest rates had gone piling down, we're sitting there going, well, hang on, interest rates are really cheap at the moment. Why is our average so high as such? And it was explained to me that, you know, we don't have the luxury. We are planning ahead and we are borrowing ahead. And from my perspective, I guess, seeing that the interest rate on average has come down really vindicates what you were telling me, Mark, with regards to the council's trying to keep the volatility out, because that's what you have to plan on as such. So compared to where it was as an average, it's actually improved. Would that be a fair comment?
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So, and I guess from that perspective, I'm seeing a trend there that's brought this down due to the work of the council officers with regards to the financial strategy that they're applying to this, which I guess vindicates, Mark, what you were saying to me 2-3 years ago with regards to, well, this is how it works. And this is showing me that we've been able to well, interest rates are high at the moment, but yet our average is lower than, substantially lower than what it has actually done, if you like, a complete reversal to where we were, cheapest only 4 years ago as such. So I don't know if that makes sense, Lawrence, but it certainly has installed a lot of confidence in me with regards to this approach, if you like, and how we're managing in this space. So well done, Mark, and and thank you for the patience over the last 4 years with regards to getting me to the point where I can actually say that.
Thank you, Councillor Halliday. My specific question would be really good for me. Taking what Martin said, what you've said, that we're seeing a decrease in interest expense over the longer period. Yet we're predicting for year one that we'll have an increase of interest expense.
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Chair.
Of around 1.1%, I think is the figure in the long-term plan.
So can I just go backwards a little bit? So,
and I'm happy if this is an issue of my naivety as a councillor and I need some more coaching from you, so I'm happy to take that offline if you like. Mark. I don't want to put you in an awkward position.
We aren't seeing a. I think we just go back a bit. We aren't saying our interest expense is going down. The financial strategy for the long-term plan is geared at building that resilience and paying down debt, but that only starts in year 2. So it takes. We've identified in the financial strategy it's going to take till year 7 before we start to see annual interest expense start to go down because we're retiring large amounts of debt. So the long-term plan will show very little change in interest expense over the first 4 years. And that's because of the capital works program, that is because of the debt that we're taking on, and it takes a wee while to actually, at a 6% or 7% average rates increase, it takes time to get to there. So I'm not sitting in front of you today saying that our interest expense is coming down. I'm saying that I can't guarantee you the interest rate that we've put into the long-term plan assumption is spot on. I can't. But our treasury management function is all about reducing the interest cost to the council. What Councillor Halliday has referred to is, if we go back 6 years, we had very low interest rates and we had interest rate swaps. And we had, under the old policy, 55% of our debt had to be hedged. And so what we were being asked at the time is, why are you hedging when interest rates are so low? and that's the function of hedging. So when interest rates are low, your hedging is expensive. When interest rates are high, your hedging comes in, and what you're seeing is the benefit of our hedging. So there's a couple of different things happening in the questions today.
Great. Thank you. I'm clearer now. Appreciate that.
Well, I think that's been a very useful discussion, right? Anything else? In that case, well, let me just page, I will, 117, you want to, you have to read the whole damn thing out. I move.
You could just do A1, you could just move.
Will somebody move on page 117, A1, 2, 3 and 4? Moved by the Mayor, seconded by David, I think, the Deputy Mayor. Right, okay. All those in favour will say aye, the contrary will say no. It is carried. Now we move to risk and insurance update. Mark, you'll be presenting this as well.
We've also got Sam Ketley from AON, who's online.
Oh, sorry, I wasn't aware of that.
No, he's just joined.
He's just joined us.
Oh, okay. Sam Ketley, you're online. Right.
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning.
Here.
So what's
So Sam is from AON.
yes, everybody knows Aon, yes. They are famous or infamous, depending on your point of view, right? So what's he going to tell us?
He's going to talk to us about the loss modelling.
Okay.
The insurance update.
All right. Thank you very much. We're happy to listen to you, right? Please proceed.
Mark, do you want to do your bit first and then I'll chip in?
Sure. Sure. Okay. All right. Through you, Mr. Chair. So we're on the insurance update, which starts on the agenda page 126. So I'll take the paper as read. It's effectively reporting to the committee our insurance renewal from 1 May 2024 to 1 May 2025. The report gives you assurance that we have actually managed to renew for both below ground and above ground. We have had the premium increase has been higher than what we've budgeted for in the long-term plan. So we did budget for a 20% increase to the premium, and we've seen that it's not enough. Where I think it's $291,000 short now. We have seen some flattening of premium prices, but unfortunately for us, when we budgeted for the insurance in the long-term plan, we were anticipating an increase in premium, everything staying the same. But what we've recently done, through advice and discussions both internally and with Aon, we've decided we've moved our treatment plants. So that's our wastewater and our water treatment plants. We've moved them. They were previously insured as below ground assets, and when they're below ground assets, the risk is a little bit lower. There's a 60% underwriting from the Crown because they're insured for natural catastrophe damage only. What we've discovered, as have other councils, is that wastewater treatment plants have got very complex electrical components to them, and there's actually a higher probability of damages caused by fire. So by having those treatment plants insured as below ground assets, if a fire broke out and those treatment plants were damaged, we would have no cover whatsoever. So we've got a little bit smarter. We're asking a lot more questions about our assets. So what we've done is we've made the call to, so the value of our treatment plants is $166 million. So if they burn down, there's $166 million worth of assets that aren't insured. So we've transitioned them from below ground into above ground. That had an impact of a premium increase of $725,000 because we no longer have 60% underwriting from the Crown. And the rates are a little bit higher because the risk is a little bit higher. So that has absorbed actually most of our premium increase. We did renew our cover. So that's the first part of the report. It's just saying we're still part of an insurance syndicate. We've managed to renew our insurance. We have a budget shortfall of $291,000. we aren't asking council to increase the budget and increase rates because we've assumed a 20% increase for the next 10 years. We've seen and know that global rates will start to flatten. So we hope in the passage of time, what we've budgeted for will cover our insurance costs going forward. And where we can, if we can, we'll cover the shortfall through reprioritising budgets. But we're not saying that. We're just saying we know we're going to have a budget shortfall. So that's the renewal. The second part of the report is just giving the committee a little bit of an update on what are we doing around. We've been looking at a self-insurance fund, a protected cell, a captive, and loss modelling. And so it just provides you just a brief update as where we're at. As part of developing the long-term plan, the council had quite substantial consideration of a self-insurance fund. We'll continue to look at that. A self-insurance fund needs money, and you have to put money away to create a self-insurance fund. Still a viable option for the council. And then it talks about loss modelling. So what we said we needed to do is we needed to refresh our loss modelling estimate. So our maximum probable loss at the moment for underground assets is 130 million. That dates back to, I think it's about 2013, 2014. It hasn't been updated. Loss modelling technology has increased. And as the report says, we've completed phase 1 of our loss modelling. We're going into phase 2, which is a GNS, more sophisticated model. We need to understand our losses, update those losses, and then we can look at, do we as a group have sufficient cover or not? And at this point, I'll hand over to Sam to talk to you a little bit about the riskscape and perhaps the timeline to get this work finished.
Just first of all, though, let me understand on this underground versus not underground. I mean, surely the fact is that they're not underground. They're actually not underground, so why were they classified as underground?
Because underground insurance is primarily for infrastructure assets, so it's obviously your pipes, and your treatment plants are connected to your pipes.
But the treatment plants are above ground.
Technically, yes. Yes.
Well, actually, they are.
Technically, yes, but they are part of our underground infrastructure.
All right. So, but
you can bury a pump station.
Sorry, but we initiated this change ourselves.
Yes.
And this has been done by other councils?
Yes.
Or?
Yes.
All right. I just want to understand. I just got a bit confused there because they're either underground or not. And obviously they're not. So there we are. Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Sam, you give us good advice, I'm sure, so we're listening to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. So just quickly on that point, it's probably better to call the policies infrastructure and then potentially buildings, because infrastructure, the pipes or the assets can be above ground as well as below ground. So pipe over it on a pipe bridge would be above ground, even though the rest of the assets can be below ground. But there are cases where we have treatment plants on either schedule, and in some cases they're split, and it's just a judgment call by clients on which schedule they want them to be put on. The key thing is to make sure they're not on both schedules, because then you're paying two lots of premiums. So that's the key thing to avoid. But just on the modelling front, just as an update. So what we've done in phase 1 is loss modelling for insurance purposes. There's really two ways of doing it. One is using an insurer vendor model, which is what we did in phase 1. So this is what insurers use to understand and quantify risk for themselves, which is what we did in phase 1. What we're going to do in phase 2 is use Riskscape, which is owned jointly by NIWA and GNS. The vendor models are created by third parties out of predominantly the US. They take science updates on an infrequent basis. So for New Zealand, most of the models haven't been updated for 2 or 3 years, in some cases even longer. And they are, because they're designed for insurers, they've got a different way of approaching the risk analysis. What we're going to do with the Riskscape GNS tool is it will use the latest National Seismic Hazard Model, which was the update in 2022. And also it will give us a better understanding of the impact of earthquakes specifically to these assets, which, because most assets, these type of infrastructure assets, particularly the Three Waters pipes, underground pipes, retaining walls, other bits of infrastructure are not well coded in insurer models, because generally these assets are not insured in great numbers globally. They don't model well, or the outcomes are questionable, shall we say, in generally. So what we're doing is going through the Riskgate model, using GNS's science, our technical know-how, and we'll provide you with loss estimates which are more reflective of the actual exposure, and you can be more certain around the decisions you're making in the future around risk retentions, be it deductibles or limits, program limits. And Mark is correct, it's been a few years since there has been an update. Two things that have changed: the science, that seismic hazard model update from 2022 is a big difference, sorry. But also the key thing here is your values have also increased, so that the modeling will incorporate both those factors. And just the last point, we've just done this for 22 councils as a group. We've modeled it firstly within the vendor model that the insurers use, and then we've used Riskgate, and it is noticeably different. And I won't go into the details of that now, but once the modeling is complete, I would suggest that we come down and sit with you in person and go through what's different, why, how to interpret the numbers, and make decisions around, where to from here. So at that point, I'll pass it back.
Thank you, Sam. So the work that you're doing will feed into our 2025 insurance renewals, right? So we'll look at a discussion with you before then. And the work that's being done, AGRC, whoever they are, who are contracted by our group of councils, that's presumably, the risk assessment is done individually on each of the 4 councils rather than just on us, or what?
Yeah, the way so AGRC is Aon Global Risk Consulting. It's part of Aon. It's where all our engineers and technical people operate in. Yes, so the way the modeling works is that everyone's data is made consistent, and then everyone's modeled collectively and then individually. You model everything. The beauty of using Riskgate is we will be able to give you an assessment of risk as a group, so test the group's limits, and then we will be able to disaggregate the group and provide you individual limits so that you can see what your exposure is and your risk is obviously different to Lower Hutt, for instance. It's far closer to the main change in the National Seismic Hazard Model is the inclusion of the Hikurangi Trench exposure that runs obviously off Wellington and the East Coast. So there is the outcomes will be different, the loss expectancies will be different, but that's the modelling. That's what the modelling will tell you, what the group impact is, and then an individual impact is, and also we'll disaggregate it so that you can understand if there was a local event, what would that actually mean for yourselves as well.
Thank you, Sam. Questions or comments? David? Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Sam. That's good. I'm looking at page 127, which means nothing to you, Sam, but it's the table of significant asset insurances. Infrastructure assets, and it's an insurance as a mixture of material damage and business interruption. 705 million, of which 600 million is combined insured, so 105 isn't. But I realise that that's not just that's just the value of the assets, but the cost of the disruption is a different number. We've got 130, which is what really matters, which is roughly a quarter of the insured bit, but a lot less of the 705. Maybe it came from what Sam just said, but we're obviously not a quarter of OWSS by most measures of people, assets, that sort of thing. So, is the council happy with this 130? Was it imposed on us by the group? Was it negotiated and said, yeah, you guys are long, skinny, and shaky. You've got far big higher risks than Upper Hutt. Can you just tell us, is 130 a good number? A number we're stuck with, or what is it? Are we pleased with that? Because I can't work it out from that.
Thank you, David. Well spotted. Yeah.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. So table 7, page 127. So yes, this table value will go up 705 million will keep going up every time we do an asset revaluation. So it's basically just saying in terms of our infrastructure assets, there's 705 million. But our maximum probable loss, so we are part of a group and we can claim up to 130 million. So the question is, are we happy with 130 million? And the answer is yes and no. That 130 million was derived in 2013, 2014. That 130 million, however, is the localised. It's the estimate of the localised maximum probable loss for Kapiti. So the $600 million group loss for OWSS, that's based on, and correct me if I'm wrong, Sam, that's based on natural catastrophe with the epicentre in Lower Hutt, in which case our maximum probable loss is about 31 million. So we specifically back then said, well, actually, that's for that event. If we had a major event with the epicentre in Paraparaumu, we'd be up for 130 million. So we've held 130 million since then. We are working with Aon. We'll go through phase 2. That 130 million is probably out of date, so we're aware of that. So we're happy with 130 million in the sense that our loss limit has been set to a localised event. We are wanting, in terms of the touchstone that's been done, that 130 million is still okay, but we are wanting to have phase 2 done, which includes a reassessment of our 130 million for the 2025 renewal.
I'm just, what concerns me there is because it's double insurance. It's insuring two separate things. One's the assets and one's the business interruption. Business interruption can be pretty hefty. We know that from Christchurch. But anything that's based on a 10-year-old valuation of an infrastructure asset, just look at inflation, not CPI, but just look at construction inflation over the last 10 years. Whatever the number was, it's got to be way out of date.
And I'll hand over to Sam. Look, in recent years, we've also had the challenge of actually getting capacity for 600 million. So we've secured the 600 million. With underground assets, there is the 60% cover from central government. So the 130 million. So the 130 million, without question, the $130 million is out of date. But we were comfortable with that because it wasn't the 32 million. We increased that to 130 million to reflect. So the most likely event is not an earthquake with the epicentre in Paraparaumu. That's less likely, but we've set it on that. But it is out of date, and we are looking to update that.
But this is replacement cost, no?
That's replacement cost, yes.
Yeah, okay.
So if I can come in on that point. So a key component here, although it's a material damage business interruption policy, it's not like your typical business MDBI policy, because actually the amount of revenue associated with these assets is minimal. The BI component is only there for some additional coverages that it provides, one of which is additional increased cost of working, and there's a few others I won't go into. But the BI associated with this is not like a typical business where you're making something, there's a revenue that's generated. If you're not able to make it, you don't make that revenue. It doesn't work that way for councils. In fact, the BI exposure for councils is generally low because your revenue comes from rates, and it's the same aspect here. So the BI, so this policy is predominantly to protect the material damage component. So that 130 at the moment is for predominantly MD. And in fact, the way the policy works, if the event was impacting just yourselves, the MD portion is limited to 130, but there are other parts of the policy which could add additional funds to that amount. So you could, in theory, if as long as you don't breach the 600 million as a group, we would work to make sure that you recovered as much as you could from all the different parts of the policy. So the main point that Mark's just pointed out is that that number, it was actually a little bit later, Mark, than 2013-14. It was probably set 16, 17, or maybe 18. But it certainly was later than 2014. That 130 though is conservative for an event that is local to you, but with the way that values have increased and that seismic update from 2022 means that we need all councils, in fact, we need all clients who've got material damage assets nationally to rethink what their exposures are, because the National Seismic Hazard Model indicated that the shaking levels are higher on average across New Zealand than what we thought previously. So we need to validate that the buildings and assets that we've got are able to withstand that. And if they're not, what does that mean? For these assets, the issue is if you increase shaking levels, you have increases in secondary perils, which is your liquefaction, landslip. And that's the bit where we are seeing that corresponding increase between what was done previously and what we're doing today. By introducing this new model, we are seeing increases in loss expectancies, purely because that's what the science is indicating.
Just an observation, we're unique in the region in that we have a water income. And good luck with collecting water rates if you're telling people to go to walk down the end of the street and get their water in a bucket from the back of a truck. So presumably that gets factored in somewhere, that we're actually going to lose a lot of income. I don't know what it is, but it must be significant because we're all paying the bills. So it covers that sort of thing, I'm assuming. And does interruption cover things like, well, we have to pump the sewage, so we have to bring in pumps and do it, because you can't just stop it.
It's business continuity.
Yeah, that sort of continuity. I don't know if that helps, but you know, I think we are different in that sense, at least as far as water goes.
Yep.
I mean, all councils sell water commercially, but we sell it to residentials as well.
And we require functioning meters to do it, yes.
Well, I just don't think you're ever going to collect it from somebody who's been told to walk down the end of the street with a bucket and say, here's your water rates, here's your bill for the volume you haven't had.
Yep.
Well, you haven't had, I suppose you don't get billed, but you still lose the income.
Okay, so where are we at? Firstly, I think we've got information on our increased premium, right?
Yes.
Quite a significant increase, but it provides us better coverage.
Yes.
Because we've appropriately classified this above ground, below ground issue and resolved that, Sam, right? So we note the increase in the premium. We look forward to getting information from you in due course, Sam, when you do phase 2 using Riskscape, and we'll see what comes out, and we'll talk to you then about the 2025 insurance renewal. Is that where we're at?
That's where we're at.
Okay.
Correct. Yep.
Anything else anyone wants to raise? Well, look, thank you for being with us, Sam. I wasn't aware that you were scheduled, but anyway, nice to see you, and see you again.
Thanks very much for your time.
Yeah. So look, I will move, the chair moves, that the Risk Insurance Committee notes the Council's 2024 insurance renewals and progress update regarding alternative risk financing options. I will move from the chair, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. All those in favour will say aye, the contrary no, carried. Right, now we're getting towards the end now. What's the next thing? Confirmation of the minutes of the 15th of February meeting. They have been circulated. Would someone who was there, Councillor Cooper, you'd like to move this, wouldn't you, right? Moved by Councillor Cooper and seconded by David Cochrane, that these be accepted. What's the wording? Is it true and correct record of the meeting held on Thursday, the 15th of February? So moved. In favour will say aye, the contrary no, carried. So that's done. And now we're going to move into the public excluded meeting. Where's my motion for that?
We're just going to turn off our live streaming.
Yep. Yep.
Because we've got to move.
Yes, leg stretch. One leg stretch? We'll get,
We've got to move first.
yes. Well, where's the motion? Where's the bloody motion? Here we are.
Just move into public exclusion.
Moved by the Mayor, seconded by the Chair. All in favour, so say aye. The contrary, no. We are now in public excluded. Right. I thought there was some palaver form of wording. Somebody wants a 10-minute break. Is that what it is?